calling our shot back to recap what we saw this past weekend in the NFL. Two quick major updates. Will Fuller was just suspended for the last 5 games of the season, as well as next year, excuse me. That was for a drug, testing positive for a drug that was prohibited. And then one update on the Ravens and Steelers game, which was supposed to happen this past Thanksgiving Day. That game has now been pushed to Wednesday and is now in jeopardy of being played this week. So we're going to hop right into what we saw. I got Logan and Sam here. And we're going to first just jump into what we saw in the Broncos and Saints game. Like I said, COVID took a weird turn this week, and we saw all of the Broncos starting quarterbacks out. And so we saw a pillow fight. Sam, how did you like watching that game?
Man, it's another one of those weird stat lines for the Saints that, walking away from it, you think, okay, I think this Taysom Hill thing's going to work. But if I told you that one of the two quarterbacks had 78 yards and 1 interception, you'd be looking at me like that was obviously Kendall Hinton. But no, that was still Taysom Hill. And so I think the main takeaway is while he can do wonders as a running back with his legs, there's still a lot of question marks as to what he can do as a passer until Drew Brees comes back. That was my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, he has yet to throw a passing touchdown in his career, which is crazy to think of. And I mean, he started 2 games and he has 2 rushing touchdowns in each of them. But yeah, it goes back to what we said last week. Like, we weren't convinced on Taysom Hill. And I was the one that was beating his drum. I was like, give him a chance. It was his first week. But yeah, it wasn't promising what we saw against the Broncos. And they themselves didn't even have a QB. And
right,
could have been able to use and abuse them because they weren't going to be able to score or move the ball. They were up by double digits the whole entire game. And yet we didn't see anything out of Taysom Hill. Logan, you see anything different?
No, I mean, now the Broncos are a respectable defense. I think their game plan was definitely, don't let Taysom run all over him. He still kind of did run all over him. I just, watching that game, I couldn't help but feel for him. He really got thrown out there. It was just he was laughing. I don't know if you saw his body language a lot. He was laughing at the situation he was in throughout the game, just shaking his head like, I don't know what's going on.
Right. And you really can't approach it with any other attitude if you're in his position, right? I mean, expectations have to be low enough to the point where you realize that, I mean, 1 completion for 13 yards, that's a good positive takeaway. You can't really ask for any much more than him, can you?
No, not at all. And I'm happy to see like how social media kind of treated him. Like, easily social media could have said, no, he's terrible. Like, what was that? But like, I mean, people don't realize he didn't start 4 years at Wake Forest. He played 4 games and then he got injured and transitioned him to a wide receiver. So it's not like he was Logan Thomas, who played several years at quarterback and then he transitioned into a tight end. It was more just he did a couple games and that was it. So shout out to him, shout out to Broncos and their fans for at least treating him nicely and saying, great work. Like, they knew how messed up the situation he was thrown into. He didn't have any practice reps. So good for them. And I guess we're moving on. We'll see what Taysom Hill can do again against the Falcons, who they just played 2 weeks ago. So we'll see if there's a better showing out of him, especially after the Falcons just had probably my biggest surprise of the week in their trouncing against the Raiders, winning 4-3-6. That was a surprising game. Did you guys tune into that one? Sam, I'll start with you. Did you watch some of that game to see how badly the Raiders got beaten?
Yeah, no, it really was one of those games where, I like when people play that logic, like X team beat Y team beat Z team, so X team is better than Z team. Well, let's not forget the Raiders are the one team that's taken down the Chiefs right now, right? This whole season. And they get blown out like that by the Falcons of all teams, who the performance they had last week against the Saints and Taysom Hill in his first outing was just laughable. So it really just makes you scratch your head like, where are these teams lining up in terms of power rankings? It just makes it hard to give any sort of clear ranking. Do I think the Falcons are good? No, I think they're going on a little bit of a hot run under Raheem Morris's start for sure. But it makes you question everything, right? I really don't know what to think of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's, if the Raiders got to play the Chiefs and looked like that every week, I think they could be probably like 8-2, 8-3. But I don't know. It's a total Raiders game, in my opinion. This is what you get out of the Raiders. They look good against the Chiefs. Arguably could have beat them 2 times. Probably should have beat them both of theirs and swept their season series. But then they come out and lay an egg. So this is what we've seen out of Derek Carr his whole career. He's always had some good games, some ups and downs. He's been a roller coaster ride. The Raiders aren't really going anywhere. They still might make the playoffs, but not a team that I'm looking for to make a long run into the postseason. But talking about a team we just talked about that someone on this podcast beat the drum to, Colts and Titans. Logan, we're calling you out. You thought the Colts were legit, and they just got run over by Derrick Henry. How you feeling about that prediction?
You don't love it. That performance left a lot to be desired if you're supporting the Colts. But I mean, look, this is the NFL. Any team could beat any team on any given Sunday. That's the whole motto. And I mean, the Colts just came out flat. It was an early game, 14-14 tie. I was feeling pretty good about the Colts' chances in that, but they made business decisions not to tackle King Henry. He just ran all over him. He ran wild. But I think if there's ever a team that can make adjustments to be in a better position, it's the Colts, just because of their personnel. Philip Rivers, his performance was less than stellar. He has these games. We know they happen, sadly. But you were missing Jonathan Taylor. I don't want to say that makes a world of a difference, but it makes a little bit of a difference. They love that three-headed running attack. I'm calling out their defense. You cannot at home give up 40 some odd points to the Titans. That's not acceptable. A team you already beat in the division last time, so needs to be better.
Yeah, well, my response to what Logan was just saying now and to some of the points he made last week, one, Philip Rivers just can't close games, and he's just not a clutch performer that you're going to have to be this year in the AFC if you want to get deep in the playoffs. And two, as good as a running back committee can be, man, those things cannot stand up to someone like Derrick Henry when he just needs to be fed the ball. And when he has one of those just completely all-encompassing games where he's just completely taking control of the offense, it's just hard to match that intensity when you have a running back committee. And granted, I understand the Colts were without one of their three, but still, even when they are all healthy, I'd still rather have Derrick Henry, hands down.
Yeah, he makes a case for the best running back in football. And I'm going to go a little off topic. Is there any chance Derrick Henry could win MVP this year? Or is Pat Mahomes, or who do you guys think is the front runner this year?
Well, I think we've definitely seen a dip from that initial enthusiasm behind Russell Wilson, right? He's had a little bit of a turnover machine in the last couple of games, so I think he's definitely dropped definitely from that number one spot, probably into like a 3 or 4 spot. And yeah, as of right now, I think Patrick Mahomes is the clear-cut guy. I mean, the way he's doing what he's doing, the numbers he's putting up, the production out of Derrick Henry is insane. And for that, he needs some recognition, and he definitely needs to be part of the conversation. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, what he did with Tyreek Hill last week, that was just so much fun to watch. He's my MVP number one guy for sure.
Yeah, we can transition right into that Chiefs-Bucks game because that was a wild one. Like you said, Tyreek Hill they couldn't guard him. He had over 200 plus, I think 260 yards almost, and over 200 yards in the first quarter. It was wild to see Tyreek Hill just run crazy on this Bucks defense that people really thought was highly touted. Like they consider them to be one of the best defenses in the league, up with the Colts and the Rams. So I don't know, the Chiefs and Bucks, that was a weird game. I mean, the Bucks made it look close on paper with 2 Mike Evans touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but the Chiefs just looked like they controlled them for the first 3 quarters. And I would agree with you. I think Pat Mahomes is the front runner for MVP, and I think it's his to lose. But I wouldn't put Derrick Henry or Aaron Rodgers aside. Aaron Rodgers does lead the league in touchdowns with 33. And Derrick Henry, if he has a couple more crazy performances, he could vault right into that conversation. Any other takeaways from the Bucks? I'll do the Bucks specifically because this is what we see out of the Chiefs week in, week out. It's always a new player, whether it's Hill, Kelsey, even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who steps up. But what about the Bucks? They're reeling recently. What do you think, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks. Everyone, preseason was anointing them Super Bowl, even champions. There were a lot of people thought Brady would be playing this game in his home stadium. for the Super Bowl. But look, I think what we learned is football, unlike basketball, you can't just piece together a team and they be successful right off the bat. I mean, it takes, especially with a weird COVID offseason, it takes time to gel. When you see some of Brady's throws, he doesn't look on the same page as some of his receivers. I just think I think their offense is kind of out of whack. I mean, just because they have all these great receivers on paper, even Leonard Fournette, that addition, they just don't look right. Next year, yeah, I think they'll be live next year. But that defense, I talk about a letdown. Everyone was touting them as one of the best in the NFC. They're getting carved up left and right.
Well, I have a positive takeaway, and I think, granted, the Chiefs did light up that defense that first half of the game. But the takeaway is that the Patriots, the Buccaneers kept it close at the end, right? And it showed you that Tom Brady still has a little bit of that Patriot-esque, late game heroics in him, and he can close it up when he needs to. Granted, they fell a little bit short, but I think if they have another opportunity to play, I think he could keep it close. My biggest question mark for that offense, though, is who is his number one target going to be? You see some series where it looks like 2010 Brady Gronk type chemistry, where they're just 3 or 4 attempts, completions, a drive, and then you have other drives where you look and you see some Mike Evans dominance on the field. A question marks of whether or not Antonio Brown is really going to be reliable late in the game. And certainly there's still some unknowns as to his chemistry with Godwin, who has some great games and then some spotty games as well. So I think really Tom Brady needs to lay the groundwork for his number one connection, just so that he has that confidence late in the game. Who can he go to and who can he count on? But I think while they did lose the game and that first half was pretty ugly for the defense, I think the offense has some very positive takeaways from that performance.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, like Logan talked about, they got a lot of talent. They arguably have the most talent, minus probably the Chiefs in the NFL on the offensive side. I think the question marks all surround the defense. Like, sure, you can get carved up by Pat Mahomes. He does that every weekend to every single team. But it was more so last week when they got carved up by Jared Goff. And that, you don't love seeing them, get beaten up by Jared Goff, who's notably never been an MVP frontrunner or any quarterback that's notable. He's not one that's like a top 5 quarterback that we all think of. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out for the Bucs. They're certainly going to make the playoffs, more so as a wild card team. But it's just not been very convincing from what I've seen out of them. But yeah, I'd like to see Brady pick it up over the last couple weeks and see where that takes him. So we're going to transition into ugly game that we just saw, which was the Jets and the Dolphins. We kind of talked about this last week. Do we think the Jets could make or win a game this year? Any chances?
Well, latest ESPN prediction had like a 69% chance that the Jets have that number one draft spot next year, which I think goes to show you how much little faith there is in the Jets winning a game next year. From what you see, granted, the Dolphins are a good team this year, but even still, only being able to put up 3 points against a team that the Jets have historically been able to play up or play down against in competitive games, even when those teams are on different levels. I just don't see a game in the season that they're actually going to be able to pick up. It's a tough remaining schedule. Really, I think their best chance is, like I said last week, week 17 against the Patriots, if they were going to do it. But even the Patriots looked better last week. So at this point, I really just don't see a way that they're going to pick up a W. I think it's going to be a winless season for the New York Jets. Pains me to say it.
Yeah, I don't know if this topic dignifies a response for me. I'd rather not talk about a team that's thinking it up this badly, but just watching it, I couldn't help but they look in full tank mode. Darnold is seriously, I mean, how he's fallen is kind of sad. I don't know. He's definitely not putting on a great audition for teams that are going to snatch him up after the Jets get Lawrence. I mean, yikes. Just watching the game, it's hard to watch it and not think the Jets are throwing it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you can do it.
go ahead. No, I was just going to read off remaining schedule. I mean, granted, the Raiders are a bit of a question mark last week against what they let happen to the Falcons do to them. But after that, they've got, Seattle and Los Angeles. They got 2 away games. And then they've finished the season with the Browns and the Patriots. And none of those are going to be easy wins. And I mean, considering what the Jets have done against even mediocre teams this year, I just don't see a way for the Jets to pick up a win and for Gase to get through the season. I really just don't.
I mean, I'm surprised Gase has made it this far. So I feel like they're paying him just to throw games because he comes out with crazy quotes like he doesn't want to. He's been splitting play calling with the offensive coordinator, and they don't want to give away a competitive advantage or disadvantage. Like that's if that were the case, it's not really helping either way. So the Jets are a mess. And yeah, you're right. The Patriots have looked better of late, and that's where I'm going to transition because I know we have Logan. You were beating the drum for Kyler for MVP, and honestly, he's not even in the conversation anymore. So, what have you seen out of him the past few weeks?
Look. I don't want to lose hope that he could be MVP. He still is he's the MVP in my heart. Little Kyler running around. He no, his shoulder injury is something more serious than they're telling us. For him to only have 5 rushing attempts, that's not the MVP. When I was banging the Kyler Murray MVP drum, he was getting way more rushing yards, way more attempts. The Cardinals offense, it did not look impressive against New England. Now, New England is notorious for game planning and shutting down what they do best. Hopkins had a pretty pedestrian game. But, I mean, there's something wrong with Kyler Murray's shoulder, and get better soon, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't believe better days are ahead of him, as I believe they either take on the Seahawks or the Rams this upcoming week. But yeah, I agree. His shoulder has not looked great, and they honestly look like the 2019 Arizona Cardinals, which, well, if you didn't watch them, they were not very good. But all their success this year is tied to Kyler running around, and yeah, he hasn't been doing that recently. Any other thoughts before I hop into our last topic?
Yeah, just that. I mean, when you have to rely on one player, right, or one secret weapon, it just makes it that much easier to be able to shut down. And I think we talked about it last week. The Patriots are one of the best teams at doing that, and so no surprise that Kyler had a definite off week last week.
If I recall, you both of you all were pretty low on the Patriots, and I remind you, they'll win these games that maybe they weren't supposed to win. This game was essentially a pick 'em. The Patriots are still a force to be reckoned with. You want them to go away, but they won't go away quietly.
Well, it's not going to be an easy path, though, for them to make a playoff push. I mean, now with the Titans taking the AFC South spot after the win against the Colts, they've still got a bunch of teams they need to get through if they're gonna secure a wild card spot for them. So we'll see. A lot of football to be left.
Yeah, I would love for the Patriots to be in the thick of it so they actually try in week 17 against my Jets. That'd be nice if they didn't just trot out and let us lose on purpose. But I guess we'll see. And that takes us into my final topic. And that's going to be the NFC East. We watched on Thanksgiving the Washington football team lay a beat down on the Dallas Cowboys. Not much of a surprise. This is kind of how this division has gone all year. Who's your guys' front runner to win the division?
Well, while the Giants currently have it, I'm going to stand by my prediction from last week. You know, I'd like to give me some credit where credit is due. I believe I called that Redskins showdown.
You deserve it.
Washington football team.
Excuse me, Washington football team. And I just think they've got some chemistry cooking. I mean, Antonio Gibson has just been dominant. And while there's really not much of an option outside of Terry McLaurin, Alex Smith has shown some chemistry with them. And so I think they're the team to be beat right now in that division. And I think, while it's not going to be a pretty record, I think they're going to get it done and host at least one playoff game this year.
Only one, not all.
Look, prior to this Daniel Jones injury, I was kind of leaning Giants. I like the way Joe Judge had him playing. They were talking about a team that's hot. The Giants were hot. Wayne Gallman was, he's no Saquon Barkley, but he's a pretty good fill-in. Like I said, their defense was playing inspired. I don't want to pick Dallas, but again, you can't help but notice how much offensive talent they have. Could they squeak out a few more wins in there that they're not supposed to? They did against Minnesota, perhaps. I won't rule out Dallas just yet.
Well, I'll beat the drum for the Eagles because I still think they can't be ruled out. I mean, Wentz has played terrible, and my whole reason for backing them is in hopes that Wentz gets benched for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts couldn't play up worse than Wentz, and you never know if throwing him in there, kind of like how Flacco was benched for Lamar Jackson. You just never know how it works. They could be very good, or they could win you games, kind of like Taysom Hill's winning games. It's going to completely shift their offense, but I mean, it's the Washington football team and the New York Giants that are in front of them, and neither of those teams are inspiring. Like, sure, the Washington football team just beat up on the Cowboys, but pretty sure anyone could do that at this rate. So I'm gonna beat the drum for the Eagles. I'd probably be wrong, but
No,
hey,
if this is a hill you're willing to die on the Eagles hill, I want you to be firm on it. I want you to come out and say unequivocally, Hurts gives them a better chance to win than Wentz. I want you to say that.
yeah, I'll give you a bold prediction. I don't even think it's that bold. If Holtz, or they play tonight on Monday Night Football, if Hurts comes in and plays more than Wentz, I will pick them to win this division, and I think they'll be better without him.
If you really thought Hurts was the better option, don't you think Doug Peterson would have went to him by now? I'm just saying, Carson Wentz is absolutely sabotaging some of their games, and he can't play much worse than he has been. But if you're gonna come out and say Hurts should be the option, I'd like to see it, and I'd like you to stand firm in that.
Well, I am standing firm. I don't think Peterson is honestly that great of a coach. He let Nick Foles walk when he won them a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying Nick Foles is end all be all, the best quarterback in the NFL, but he played better in that playoff stretch than Wentz has ever played. And so I'm gonna beat the drum. I mean, maybe you want your rookie season Wentz, who played for a couple good games and then hurt his knee, and then he hasn't been the same since. So
Hey, you got to be careful though with a big quarterback switch like that because, what does it lead to? Do you start to lose the locker room? Does it start to look like you have no control over your team? Is it just for the game or is it for the remainder of the season? The Eagles are still very much in this. So this is not, let's just test the waters, see how he performs. They need to win these games. And so, I kind of have to push back on what Austin's saying. I don't think you can throw him in right now. I think you need to stick with Wentz this season. Wall definitely dipped vet, but he's still the vet, and he's the guy who's going to lead your team to win the most games. So,
no, that's a perfect point. Look at what Miami did with Tua and Fitzpatrick. I mean, Fitzpatrick was playing well still, and he threw into it. And while the Dolphins are still in the thick of things, would you say they're trending up or trending down?
they're probably
trending down. I mean, he had a great start, but I think now it's definitely on the down.
Exactly, and so let this be a cautionary tale for Philly fans. You're clamoring for Hurts, but if you go backwards,
No, and I mean, you look at where the Dolphins are at. They kind of needed that spark. I mean, is Fitzpatrick going to be able to have you beat the Bills? Probably not. So I don't know if I necessarily disagree with Flores for making that call. But if you're the Eagles, you're still very much in control of this division. Granted, you're not at the top anymore, but you win tonight and you are back again. So, I think you got to play your cards very carefully here. And I just think it's too early to make a call like that could potentially have some very negative downsides.
Yeah, but it's all about risk and reward, and whether or not, if Wentz gives them an ability to win 2 games, and while Hurts might lose every single game the rest of the year, he also could give them a higher ceiling. And so that's the only way. I think tonight there's been reports that Hurts will be featured a little more, maybe in like a Taysom Hill role where he's running up Wildcat. They do it every like once or twice a game, but not as often as the Saints were doing it pre Drew Brees injury. So it'll be interesting. I mean, and I do want to push back. Like, putting Tua in over Fitzpatrick hasn't hurt them that much. I mean, they were undefeated prior to the Broncos game where he got benched, and there's something with his thumb. Maybe that's just an injury, but you ultimately want to see kind of what you have before it's too late. And so I don't blame them for playing Tua. They know they're not winning a Super Bowl with Fitzpatrick there, and I don't really think the Eagles think they're going to win a Super Bowl with Wentz at their current rate. So you might as well throw Hurts in, see where he takes them, and go from there.
They definitely need a spark, but I think the biggest takeaway right now is the same thing we were talking about last week. This division is still very much up for grabs. There's no clear-cut winner or loser. It's really anybody's team to take right now. And so it's going to take a team like the Eagles, maybe surprising everyone and having a good performance against the Seahawks. If that's what it's going to take, it's still anybody's division right now to win.
That's certainly true. It's far from over. Every team is still in it. So I guess we'll see how Monday Night Football turns out. But that's all we got for you guys today. We'll be back next Monday, per usual, recapping what we see in Week 13 of the NFL season. It's been fun, and we'll catch you next week. Peace.